Okay, good morning. I have 9 o'clock on a Friday morning. This is Jenny Schenker from the MCCA, and we're ready now to start the webinar. I wanted to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us on this webinar to introduce public reporting from CEPI and talk a little bit about, and then as you're looking at the presentation that Kelsey's going to share with you, be thinking about your guided pathways efforts and how some of this data might help you to inform whether those efforts are being successful, or what you might want to be thinking about monitoring as you begin or continue to work on setting up, your program mapping, streamlining your programs, looking at your advising and advising processes, particularly with looking at students returning for another year. So there's going to be a lot of things to think about. I want to ask, before I turn it over to Kelsey, I want to make sure that folks can hear me. So if you can hear me, just raise your hand, please. Does everybody knows how to raise their hands in the webinar? Yep, okay. It sounds like I'm audible. So that's terrific. I wanted to let you know, for your colleagues who are not able to be with us live, we'll be recording this webinar. You're going to all be muted, so please put your questions in the question box. I'll be watching for questions through Kelsey's presentation, and if we get some questions, we'll pause and ask her to address them, and then also we'll have a little time for questions at the end. Thank you. And I'd like to turn it over to Kelsey now.
Thank you, Jenny. Let me change. All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kelsey Hecker. I work for the Center for Educational Performance and Information. I'm primarily a My School data analyst, which we'll be talking about today. And I'll be walking you through how best to leverage some of the public reporting that we have, specifically the post-secondary data. I've given this presentation before at the Student Success Summit last year, and Jenny and Erica and everyone at MCCA were gracious enough to ask me again to come and present. So I am going to kick right off. As Jenny said, if you have any questions, please let her know, and we welcome them. All right, but I should hide this. Okay, so today we'll go over just really quickly what CEPI and My School data is for those of you who don't know. I'm going to assume that there is some familiarity with at least My School data in the room, and CEPI. So again, we're focusing on the data, so I don't want to go over that for too long, but then we'll cover our public reporting, which answers questions like how many students enroll into my college, how many students transfer into and out of my college, how many students are earning successes in my college, and how long are they taking to earn these degrees or successes. Some of these questions are things that you already know, especially because you work with the data and you work with your institution. So this is just another note of what the state knows. This is what the state collects from your institutions. So hopefully reality is reflected back to you. And if it's not, that's something I would most definitely like to talk about. My colleague, Rachel Edmondson, was hoping to be here. She really leads the work groups amongst IHE staff, and she works with collecting the data primarily. She's kind of my yin to my yang, but we'll see if she'll step in. So real quick, for those who don't know, CEPI is a division at the state of Michigan. We're underneath the state budget office. So even though we partner with several departments that has data of interest, like the Department of Ed for K-12 and early childhood, the Workforce Development Agency, who has since really been relabeled to TIA, the Talent Investment Agency. And then we partner with Department of Health and Human Services. So CEPI is actually, this is our 18th birthday this year. Woot woot. And we're responsible for collecting, managing, and reporting out education data in Michigan. We've been collecting post-secondary data for about 6 or 7 years now. Over time, we've seen great strides in better data quality, more universities and community colleges submitting data to us, which we do when you guys essentially put on this identifier, something that CEPI calls the Unique Identification Code, or the UIC. Now, as you can see, kind of in this graphic, this is obvious, this is the education spectrum, but what we're allowed to do with that UIC is connect to those other departments that I talked about. So really, we've got a big gap right here that's connecting to workforce data, which I'll quickly touch on later on. But we're supposed to see some workforce updates on my school data later this year, which will be, we're looking forward to. So all student and accompanying data is submitted to CEPI with the UIC. And if there's high schools or colleges and universities that participate with e-transcript, those transcripts that are coming to you and to your institution should automatically include that unique identification code. So as the student moves from levels or in between schools or colleges, that UIC should stay on that student. So we only have one code identifying the student. And what that really allows us to do at CEPI is our longitudinal data reporting, which is where we really show some value to you on my school data, along with data requests and things like that. With this common and data definition and standards that we ask for everyone to submit data to us, we're able to connect these different data sources, and that's what we'll talk about today. So even though you have likely some sort of access to data, whether it's enrollment records or course records, anything like that, CEPI can add in out-of-state colleges, and they can add in maybe some of the transfer records and information on some of the transfer students in and out, things like that. So that's mostly the background on CEPI, but these are the data that we use, at least for post-secondary reporting. So in-house, where we collect our data from you and the K-12s and everybody else, we've got the Student Transcript Academic Report Repository, also known as STAR. Some of you might actually work to help submit STAR to us, which is collected at starting in, I believe, August into October. And right now, the participating IHGs are the public, community colleges and public universities. Independents could opt in. This year is actually the first year legislation is requiring all Michigan independents to submit to STAR. So that's exciting for CEPI because while we use other sources for independent Michigan college data information, this will be more robust and it'll have our standards on their data as well. And the other side of the house is the K-12, which is the Michigan Student Data System General Collection. This is things where all the K-12 demographics will come in, and enrollment statuses. This is where we learn about their grad rates and their high school exit statuses, their economically disadvantaged, early middle college. It's very robust. And we additionally get data for post-secondary reporting from the Michigan Department of Education. So assessment scores, which would include MSTEP and the SAT. And we also get like high school CTE program information, which is fairly new to the post-secondary suites of report. And we'll talk about that a little later. Now, we also work with external data sources for post-secondary reporting, specifically National Student Clearinghouse, the student tracker data. So for those of you who don't know, National Student Clearinghouse is actually the basis of post-secondary reporting for the majority of the US, the states in the US. They don't have their own post-secondary collection that's readily available to be reported on. So they really rely on National Student Clearinghouse, which does cover about 3,500 colleges and universities in the US, your publics and your privates, and your community colleges, your 2-year, your 4-year universities. We also work with the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System, IPEDS, which I'm sure is a bit more familiar. But what we're using and pulling from IPEDS is mostly standardization items. So we'll use the college names and universities from IPEDS versus what they can submit to National Student Clearinghouse, along with CEPI program codes and the naming conventions. All right, I'm gonna jump in then to My School Data. What is My School Data? You know, who powers it? So My School Data is the official public reporting site for Michigan education information. It is mostly powered by the Center for Educational Performance and Information. I have a team of, there's about 4 of us, and we are just in this site every day trying to make it better and get relevant data up and posted for everybody. So we have about 100 plus educational reports that span, as you can see, from early childhood to post-secondary. Workforce will pop up here when we get some new data in, but it's under other right now. So the majority of CEPI's post-secondary reporting is published on My School Data, and it does continue to be one of My School Data's most visited subject matters. We get questions from all over the US about our data. We get just researchers just at awe that we have this amount of data. And it really starts with the collaboration that we have with MCCA and the public universities. This entire effort has been a collaboration, not just with the state. We work to try and pull in interested parties who would really just kind of like to help guide where My School Data goes next. And I'm going to jump off this PowerPoint pretty soon. There is a PowerPoint that I'm thinking will get out to you after this presentation, which hopefully has a little bit more of the details in case I gloss over any too highly. But I do just want to point out a couple things. So My School Data right now, and I'm sure this is a word that several of us have heard, we're in transition. So My School Data launched in 2010, and we have not seen any sort of facelift since 2010 up until recently. So in January 2018, if anyone visited the site, they would probably see some differences that were met with, indifference. Some people really liked it, others found it a little confusing to find some of the reports that they've come to know, and they know exactly where they are. So please bear with us. We are really just trying to make My School Data a responsive website so that you should be more easily be able to access it on your phone. We're giving ourselves more real estate to put more metrics on the page versus the real estate we used to have. We had a left-hand navigation over here. And so we lost about 20% of our screen. And yeah, so that's some of the changes to My School Data. You'll drop to in the top-down navigation bar. Where we're going to focus today is looking at the post-secondary, and we're going to look under other real quick in the data files. Everything that we're going to see right now is public and on myschooldata.org. The part that is not currently public, so when I say public, I mean that you're accessing my school data without a secure login. Everything we're going to see is attainable to you at your fingertips right now. The part I'm going to show you, though, is that we have data right now, 16-17 data, that's behind preview, meaning only logged in users can see the data. It's a courtesy we try to extend to secondaries and anyone who we're reporting data on behalf on, so they can prepare with what we're saying. Okay, this is where I'm going to jump live. Jenny, do you have any other pieces that I missed?
No, it's going great, and we have no questions so far. Don't forget to type your question in the question box if you have one. Meanwhile, let's return to the presentation. Thanks, Kelsey.
Thanks. All right, so this is the My School Data homepage. Please, again, expect a couple, some changes in the interim before we do our major redesign. Our redesign is really not to frustrate users, and we're not, for any of those of us who follow Facebook or ESPN or Yahoo, and the design and the layout's always changing. My School Data wants to get it right. We want to do one and done. But because we have this new top nav, there were, you know, I wouldn't call them problems, but less than desirable results when we had to move our top nav to the top. One is our home page right now. It kind of looks like, in my opinion, we forgot about it, but I'm super critical because I work on the website. But you should still see the same elements for those of you who are familiar with My School Data. This post-secondary page will take you to a landing page so you can learn more about the data. It did not when we launched, and I was fortunate enough to have people let me know as we were testing. Yeah.
Could you, as you start to introduce this login data, will you be talking about who at the college can access the data and how the college can share the data with other people who are perhaps not the key holders?
Yes. Yep.
Great. Cool.
So I'm gonna hold off to talk about that until we talk about the one report where you need this login. I'm logged in right now, so we can look at the latest data and kind of give you guys a sneak preview. But with the so the public site as it exists right now, if you are not logged in, you can still access about 85% of the entire website. But just know that when we start talking about the login a little bit more, you do get more access to a lot more information, including smaller data points, which we suppress for FERPA, and the Student Pathways Report. Okay, so I think I've talked about the homepage enough, so I'm going to jump right in to school data. So under the post-secondary tab, I'm going to start with an easy one, college undergraduate enrollment. Now, for the most part, every My School Data report has the same look and feel, functions, and features. You are usually taken to a report setting page, which is asking you, what do you want to look for? In case you, like, I know what I'm looking for based on the title, and I work with this data for, gosh, 5+ years now. But college undergraduate enrollment is going to show you the number of undergrads enrolled in Michigan and at your community college or your university. If I wanted to check real quick what it means is, reports a summary of undergraduate students enrolled at Michigan colleges and universities, searchable by college. This About This Report button is on nearly every report. What it means is, one of those things. What it means is a summary. Why it matters are questions. This is kind of what we've heard from our stakeholders. You know, why is this information important? And about the data, this is where you really start getting into the details of the report. And so if there's questions on, well, what is an undergraduate? Those are things that you would find in About the Data. So to start off, I am going to look at all colleges and state. As you can see, there are several public colleges and universities to select from. I'm going to just look at the statewide approach for the most part today. School year, I'm going to choose 16-17 data. And this is truly school year enrollment. This is not just fall, which is iPads. We follow the fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th, to do our counts. College type, this is where I could just focus on the community colleges, which I am going to do. And enrollment type is an additional setting that I can elect to choose. I see I can look at age, degree seeking status, or whether or not they are a prior year Michigan high school graduate. I'll do all by category so we can get the full feel for the report. And you are typically taken directly to what we call a snapshot view, which is only looking at the selected school year. So here we're looking at the 2016-17 school year. Other features you could look at are student count and percentage that you toggle back and forth. And we'll jump to seeing trend data and exactly what entity breakdown is in a second. All my school data reports will typically give you the chart and the data table underneath. The chart is interactive to a certain degree. Nearly all of our charts have hover overs. Some, as we'll see, you can drill down into to get more information. So what we're seeing here is the community college undergraduate population in Michigan. We see that overall, the state students aged 24 and under are enrolling into Michigan community colleges, and about half of them are over the age of 25. We've heard feedback that that's a good start, but there are so many more age categories that we could look into. So eventually what we're hoping is that we'll have this broken out to a more detailed level. Here we have degree seeking students. These are the students who were identified to CEPI as intending to seek a degree compared with the non-degree seeking students. And then we also have, for those who are curious, how many of those students in 15-16 actually graduated from high school and enrolled into a Michigan community college. All right. So that is one school year. Sorry, someone was trying to come into my meeting room. That is one view of college undergraduate enrollment, but let's dig in a little bit more. This trend functionality, which I'm going to jump to right now, is going to give me the last 5 years of enrollment data for Michigan. Now, there's kind of a lot of colors going on, so I'm going to elect to go back to edit report, which are my report settings, and change up exactly what I'm looking at here. So I'm back to edit report. I'm going to focus, and it was just on alphabetical order. I'm going to look for Alpena Community College. And I'm also going to decide to add a comparison. I want to see Alpena Community College, their undergraduate enrollment numbers compared to another school. Maybe another community college that I consider a peer, maybe similar events we attend for college nights. Basically, I want to see the trend compared to another. And here I'll go ahead and select, I'll go with Beta Knock. I'm going to switch up my enrollment type to age. And the second I get off of that all by category, where we saw all age, degree seeking, and prior year, I get report categories. So I could figure out by race, ethnicity, the breakdowns, and by gender. And I'll click gender right now and hit view results. So what I'm going to get is a side-by-side trend chart, essentially. Here I'm seeing student count data, and where there's a pretty big leap when it comes to the females for Alpena Community College. For the most part, these have comparable sizes, undergraduate enrollment sizes, but I'm going to go ahead and switch to the percentage view, which tells me over time, Alpena Community College has, well, they've both seen increases in the amount of females in terms of their undergraduate population, and they tend, oh, not females, excuse me, the 24 and under. So younger population at Alpena than I did previously, along with Beta Knock. But I do have a difference between the two when it comes to this age gap, I suppose you could say. I have less 25 and over at Alpena, making up my undergrad population, a wider gap compared to Beta Knock. Other features are these hover overs. So the graphs tell you something, but you could always hover over to get the exact data metric we're talking about, along with scrolling down and checking out the table, which will list your locations that you selected and the information you're looking for. Now, entity breakdown, this one is essentially showing the relationship between your selected IHE, community colleges as a whole, and then the entire state of Michigan. I have to go back to statewide in order to really get a good feel for the entity breakdown. So excuse me as I go back to my report settings. But breakdown, what we're showing you here is simply a data table, but it does have all the data in the report. So I have my statewide total enrollments, but I start seeing all the breakdowns right here on screen. If on-screen tables aren't really your thing, you can come up here to download print, where you can download data for your selected location. You can download report. These are other options for those of us who would like to dig in more on their side into the data. Okay. Any questions about college undergrad? And again, this isn't necessarily any sort of information that is new to you, depending on how often you work with things like enrollment numbers. What I'm hoping is that if you peruse this report, what you're seeing is what you were expecting to see. So this is fiscal year, not fall enrollment data, so it's not going to match up with iPads. We're including everyone when it comes to whether they were a summer guest enrollment or if they've been half-time, degree seeking, non-degree seeking, as we saw. This captures that population. Graduates are not included. Okay. All right, so that kind of got us used to like the functionality of my school data. Now the one I'm going to jump into now is the college transfer report. This report might not necessarily be data that you easily have access to. Remember that we use our in-house collection of STAR, but we also have National Student Clearinghouse. So we can follow where these students are going to. You might be having conversations with students of, their intended transfer. This is a report you can come to and kind of learn about that transfer population of who is leaving your community college and where they're going. Are they going to 4 years? Are they going to other 2 years? How many are coming back? Or how many are actually transferring into your institution? Okay. So college transfer, I'm going to actually look at college types since I'm talking to community colleges. I'm going to switch my levels to 2-year. Just going to look at my in-state community colleges. That's my population of interest. I'm going to look for any transfers that occurred during the 16-17 school year. And here I have an option called report type. There's transfers by college, which is a detailed breakdown of where Michigan community college students are going by college. And then I have a broader, which is whether or not they're leaving the state. Are they transferring to 4 years? I'm going to start with transfer by college. So let's define a transfer real quick before I get into this, which is details you can find in the About This report. A transfer that CEPI and a community college and university work group decided on was that if you or if your institution in STAR tells us that a student was a transfer, we will count them as a transfer, and we will do our best to find what schools that they transferred to or that they transferred from. If we can't find who you told us was a transfer, we have a location in the data table called unknown, and those are just the students that we couldn't find. That's not to say that CEPI is all-knowing and we could not find that, that wasn't true, but what it could mean is that these students are going to trade schools, or these students are going to out-of-state colleges that do not participate with the National Student Clearinghouse. However, the National Student Clearinghouse, and actually I think Jenny might know more about this, but I know there's a tie when it comes to financial aid and student loan payment. There's just that relationship. That's why people are submitting data to the National Student Clearinghouse.
Right, there are more.
So a transfer.
Past, yes. Sorry, there are more incentives for institutions to report to the National Student Clearinghouse than there have been in the past. So that data is getting better and better.
And that's great. There are reports that National Student Clearinghouse offer that are quite interesting. So one thing that CEPI actually works with our community college and universities is what reports our National Student Clearinghouse doing that CEPI could consider with our STAR data. STAR has more data that we collect than the National Student Clearinghouse, and we're allowed to standardize it a bit more with our definitions and data quality. Okay, thanks, Jenny. Okay, college transfers. This is not including your summer transfers. So we are only looking at students who are enrolled in a fall, winter, or spring period when we're counting these students. Now, in order to be a transfer, we decided in the business rules that students needed to completely leave one institution and enter another. So if they were dually enrolled, that information would be counted in other places, like the college undergraduate enrollment report, but that would not be captured here. Students fully need to exit one institution when entering another when we calculated college transfers. Okay, so what this is answering is two questions. How many students transferred to any Michigan community college and where they came from on the left side of the graph? The right side of the graph is telling you the students who are transferring from a Michigan community college in the state, so not a particular one, and where they were going to. So that kind of takes a second sometimes to wrap your head around. But in context, we have Baker College of Flint here for the first one. Now, students are leaving Baker College of Flint. About 1,600 students are transferring from Baker to a Michigan community college. And this happened and occurred in 16-17. On the flip side, students transferred out of a Michigan community college and entered Baker College of Flint. when you compare the two, there's just a little bit more when it comes to students entering or transferring to Baker College of Flint, but it's pretty balanced. So talking about Michigan community colleges as a whole is what we're doing on this page. But what I want to jump to is an actual school for a little bit more context. And again, I'm not picking on Alpena, it just A comes up first. All right, so again, these are leaving and transferring out of Kirtland Community College and transferring to Alpena Community College on the left side of the graph. And now I can sort. So if I'm interested in who's leaving Alpena Community College to enter another community college or university, this is where I'd find that information out, and I can resort it. So what I'm learning here is that several, in terms of market share, I guess, most of the transfers are actually leaving and going out of state to a 4-year, 44 students. Other than that, what I'm seeing is students are transferring out of Alpena to go to the universities, but also to the community colleges, to Kirtland and Delta College. These might be patterns that you're aware of and have explanations for if you're an Alpena Community College staff member. Some of these might make a lot of sense. But what's interesting is when the data kind of reaffirms what you already know, but it also helps you find patterns of what you weren't necessarily expecting. So I'm going to sort back on the students who are coming to Alpena Community College. And right here it says click on an individual bar on the chart for further demographic and performance information. So I can drill into this report for more information that really just describes these 17 students. So if I'm looking at, so again, before I click on this, this is my Kirtland Community College kids who are transferring to Alpena. So let's learn more about them. So this was the first stab of more. What we can tell you real quick is, the race ethnicity of these students, the gender, and the grade point average. So what this particular bar down here for grade point average is saying is that 13 students transferred to Alpena from Kirtland, and at Alpena, their first session they attended, they had a GPA greater than or equal to 2.0. Down here we have the actual average of those students who transferred to Alpena from Kirtland, which is about a 3.03 when it comes to GPA. Now GPA data is
Claire,
only available for STAR. So yeah, go for it.
We have a question regarding the data. Are these data are submitted by institutions, but as you're looking at this transfer data, obviously you're looking at the overall the submissions from a number of colleges. So is that true?
Yes, that is correct. So
okay.
So let's say for Alpena in particular, they submit data to STAR. They tell us who they have a record as being a transfer student. My school data and CEPI will crunch numbers and will find where those transfers occurred. We will also determine if there's transfers on our own, because sometimes transfers aren't, they don't declare themselves necessarily. So my school data has an additional calculation in the background where we're picking up what's looking like a transfer, where they left maybe a community college in the fall and transferred to a new one in the winter, let's say, of the same school year. This is including Michigan community colleges, the universities, out of state, in state, I already said in state, 2-year, 4-year, public, private, whatever we have in our database at CEPI is what we're seeing here. So I know Erica, who I believe is on the call, but MCCA really, we have a lot of dialogue about college transfers and this report in particular. Let me jump real quick to a summary of college transfers statewide. So I'm not going to get those details of the college names for Alpena in particular, but I am going to learn a bit more where they're coming and going from. So stick on my left for a minute. These are my transfers to Alpena. So I have several community colleges participating, or not participating, but essentially these students are transferring out of these community colleges to Alpena in my in-state bar up here. I also have, when I look at, kind of what's popping out at me the most, Alpena transfers are really staying in state for the most part. They're not leaving out of state. Some do, of course, but when we're talking about the transfers in and out of Alpena, they're primarily happening within Michigan. Okay, are there any questions?
I have a question. Can we see what percentage of our transfer students graduate from the four-year institution they transfer to?
One more time, sorry.
Oh, can we see what percentage of students graduate if they, so you've got these transfer students, they went to, Central or whatever. Can you, does this data track whether or not they have graduated from that school?
Not currently. That is that's a metric of interest to know, okay, so once the students transfer, what are they doing? The first step that we took was at least saying the grade point average to help measure that. But what eventually we'd like to see on this screen is, and did these students eventually obtain the degree they were seeking for? That's something we could break down by bachelor's, associate's, certificate. That's another metric that's on our radar for what we would like to add to this transfer report. We have another report that we'll look at after this one that will start kind of answering that question a little bit more. It doesn't answer it directly, but even further down this presentation, there's a data file where you could start figuring this out if you're ready to crunch some numbers. Okay. All right, so that's our college transfer report. I'm going to go ahead and jump to what we have for success rates. These are the post-secondary success rates that CEPI worked with MCCA, the universities, our legislative, not legislative, but our state budget office team. And we really came together to determine how we define success in Michigan. Let me jump to this kind of success rate summary page. You can read more about the success rates here, what this is and what this is not real quick. So success rates is only looking at Michigan's public universities and community colleges. We include data from NSC, in-state, out-of-state, but we're reporting on behalf of our publics here. And we've taken the time to define what a successful outcome is, and we include transfers in this report. This is school year data. It is a little different from the new iPads graduation rate that they're putting, or that they're, I believe it's already out actually. But at one point, iPads was not looking at transfers. They were looking at first time degree seeking students. And we're trying to include a broader population, knowing that our colleges and universities are serving several different scenarios when it comes to educating students. So our success rate summary page, clicking this, you'd get a really detailed methodology document so you can understand more of the differences. But what I'm going to point to right now is two parts. One is the graphical interface, and the other is the more detailed data that we can learn about. So this data is still being crunched for the 16-17 school year. This is something that we're expecting to be out in April, maybe May, so something to think about. But this is only using enrollment data up until the 15-16 school year. Just to answer why are we so behind, because it's 2018. So we have to think about when we are collecting this data, we're collecting it after period to audit and fully review your collections. We then have to combine it with the National Student Clearinghouse data, and we've got some validation pieces that we need to do. Typically, our post-secondary reports are out in February or March. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to the graphical.
Just one more question, I think,
Yeah.
in terms of like linking the success report with the transfer report. Would it be possible from one of those, from either of those reports to see like if a student transfers having earned a degree, et cetera, how many, or would we see just how many credits they got?
So not right now, not in our public reports aggregate do we specifically follow transfer students into a degree that they eventually get, whether or not it's at your institution. But those details are something we could look at in what is called the Student Pathways data files, which is individual level data, but we can find those students who start at a community college and 2 years later are achieving a degree somewhere else, and we'll walk through an example to find those details. But publicly and aggregated, that's not quite available yet.
Thanks.
No problem. Okay, the success rates, it feels a little different, which it should. Like I said, my school data is kind of playing with how can we get you information out quicker, but also cheaper. We've been custom coding my school data, which has been expensive. So we are trying to explore other options for technologies to get you guys the data. Let's go ahead and look at the community colleges as a whole. And I'll hit view report. So what I'm going to focus on is this right column. When we launch our new data in 2017, we're not going to have this difference of what we have called success and comprehensive success. Comprehensive success is just a more, it's just a term that really describes more successful outcomes than what success had defined. So if we read this real quick, the comprehensive success rate for all community colleges includes students who have earned a certificate, associate, or bachelor's degree, or who have transitioned to a four-year university. So we're not just counting degrees in these rates. We also include, for community colleges only, a transition to a four-year university. So when we're looking at these numbers, that's something to think about. Cohort, this is an enrollment cohort. So for the community colleges, this bar up here explains the students who entered a community college in 2009 or 2010. Now this will include those students who are moving in and out of the public university sector. But if they leave a four-year, their clock gets restarted in a community college sector. Sorry, that wasn't explained very well. But that's why there's that PDF for the methodology where we actually have some pretty cool graphics to help explain this. So, okay, again, community colleges, these are the students who have first enrolled in the 2009-10 school year. This is across Michigan. And what we're seeing here is how long is it taking these students to add some sort of successful outcome. So about 18.9% after 2 years that they were enrolled, there were 18.9% that earned one of these. Now, this is our older data, this 2009-10 data. So what we're seeing over time, there is a gradual increase, and we do, the state kind of reflects that that is true, that we are just graduating awarding degrees or encouraging transfers more and more. But if you kind of look at some of the detailed numbers, some things in the older data might pop out as a little bit more wacky than our more recent data would. 2009, 10, 10, 11 right now have full 6-year success rates that we've calculated for. Right now we're stopping at 6. There's no reason why we can't go 7 and 8 here, but 6 was kind of our cap for now to look at. So you've got 2 different ways you can look at this data. There's the bar graph, and then there's the trend line along with the data table underneath. Now, just based on some of those questions, that's not, the level of detail that you're looking for. At least to answer or start answering more of questions like that. So what I'm going to do real quick is jump to this community college Excel spreadsheet, which will also be changing. This is a little antiquated. We're essentially building a downloadable data file service where you guys can select your settings and get a CSV. So when you download this, what you're downloading really is more data. So the graph is nice to look at for a high-level view, but what we're looking here is when I want a little bit more behind those numbers. Several tabs down here. Again, I'm looking at the enrollment cohort year for 2014-15. I'm going to look at the second rate year. Rate year 3 is blank because we didn't have the data for that yet. So this is the 2-year success rates, which let me come in a little bit more. So that's kind of, I want to take you through real quick of what these numbers are saying, but more details again are in that methodology. So for all community colleges, for the 2014-15 enrollment cohort year, I've seen nearly 100,000 students enrolling into a Michigan community college for the first time. What I am doing though is taking out those non-degree seeking enrollments, which is about 20%, 25. So what I'm left with is a degree seeking cohort. Now after this degree seeking cohort, that this non-degree seeking students, these are the students that were defined as the IHEs told us in terms of non-degree and degree seeking. So there's an additional calculation before we get to this denominator of the success rate, where we will remove students who transitioned out without a success. Specifically, since we're looking at Michigan community colleges, these are the students who, actually, no, because it's not students who went to a 4-year. These are students who, sorry, wasn't ready for that one. Transitioned out without success. We'll come back to that. But these are the students transitioning in to the cohort. There aren't any yet. This is the first cohorts, which makes sense to me. That one, I'm gonna take a note just so I'm ready for next time. For our adjusted state cohort, which is our denominator. Now we did a CEPI calculation of how many of those students are actually full-time, meaning that they are obtaining 30 credits a year. So this is not a calculation that we're using from any other sources right now. This isn't submitted by the IHEs at this time. This is just something that CEPI tried our hand at to see how we could calculate full-time versus half-time or just not full-time. So of those, yeah.
Can I clarify? So that those 30 credits can be developmental or college level, correct? They're just
correct.
credits. Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Credit is credit. Yes. Okay, so back to the 73,000 number, there are 33,000 students who are still continuing in a community college without achieving some sort of successful outcome. And here are where we're talking more about those successful outcomes. The order's kind of weird right now. I'm not going to explain it because it's changing this year. But here's where I'm going to see those students who earned that certificate 2 years into their community college pathway, I suppose you could say. This is the number of students who earned a bachelor's degree. 0, that's 2 years into a community college. Not necessarily a surprise here, and not every community college offers bachelor's degrees. So here are the transfers who enrolled in a 4-year institution. So there's 13,000 of these 73,000 who enrolled into a 4-year institution, which is counted in that numerator of success, along with earned an associate's degree. So that's kind of the pathway. You can look at your own community college here if you haven't seen this information yet. But again, we will update with 16-17 enrollment data this April or May, excuse me. The work group, the collaboration on this report was pretty fantastic. I had the pleasure of still being more on the data side than the presentation side, and everyone putting their heads together and coming to consensus was really wonderful, and we learned a lot more about the data. We improved data quality pieces. This effort wasn't just the creation of this report. We had a lot of other benefits after. I think Jenny and both Eric.
Yeah, I'd like to second that, because I sat on that committee, and those were really good, positive discussions, and these reports have been really useful to us. So it's great to see them coming out and continuing to be improved. Yep.
So this year, for 2017, we are adding race, ethnicity, and gender into this report. And like I said, we're not using these terms like comprehensive success and success anymore. Success was really kind of like a 1980s, 90s, probably even before that, but just kind of public opinion on community colleges grant 2-year degrees and universities grant 4-year degrees. That was a rule that the work group didn't want to really agree that was reflective of Michigan post-secondary education, which is comprehensive success total, and that's what we're really just reporting out moving forward. Okay. How are you guys doing? Okay. So those are our post-secondary reports right now. I have a couple updates in terms of more post-secondary reports that you'll see later this year. The other one I want to touch on real quick is wasn't built for a community college or university perspective, but it actually comes from the K-12 side of the house. So my school data, when we built in 2010, we didn't even have our post-secondary data yet. So the base of my school data is K-12, but since then we are focusing on basically anything we can that's not K-12, since our K-12 library is pretty intense already. So what we are focusing on is early childhood, post-secondary, workforce, and kind of filling those holes in, such as the transfer students and whether they eventually obtain a degree, things like that. So let me talk real quick about college enrollment destination, just because there is the wealth of knowledge that goes beyond, just the post-secondary side of the house. College enrollment destination right now tells K-12s where their high school graduates are enrolling in. So especially for an advising counseling office, for administrators, this is either new information to you or perhaps it's not. I'm going to do Lansing Community College since I know this area. Oh, no. Haha, I broke my own rule. We can't look at Lansing here because this is a K-12 report. But what I can look at is for a local high school to the Lansing area for the graduating class of 2016. What colleges are they enrolling in? I'm looking at all. I want to see everything and anything that my school data can tell me. And I want to know those students who immediately enrolled into college after graduating high school, which is this enrollment in 6 months. We go out to 48 months, which accounts for gap years or just they entered the workforce first and then decided to return to college. Count type, I'm going to look at all of my college enrollments. I don't care if they went to one community college first compared to another. I want to see everything. So at least for East Lansing High School, geographically, these are, the two closest community college and university. These numbers make a ton of sense. You do see where else they went, including the out-of-state colleges. Now, I'm not going to dig into this side of the data because it's not as pertinent to the community colleges. But if I come up here, download the data, I can spin this report, kind of flip it on its head, and look from a community college perspective. When I download the data, what I get is everything essentially that we're showing. So it looks a little intense right now. Actually, that's not true because what I'm going to show you in a minute is way more intense. But what I can do here is I can look at this IHE name, do some quick filtering in Excel. Let's say I'm looking at Lansing Community College. Oh, that didn't work. Lansing Community College. So what I'm doing is essentially looking for all the high schools that are attending or that are essentially taking students and sending them to Lansing Community College. Take off all buildings. I'm not interested in the districts or the statewide totals. I just want to see the high schools. And then real quick, I can do some sorting just to see Z to A. To see who's sending the most high school graduates to Lansing Community College. For those of you not familiar with this area, there's double because, sorry, I had this all nice and filtered early so you didn't have to see this, but this is kind of the work that you guys have to do anyways when you're working with data. Looking only at the 6 months of those immediate enrollments. And what I see are those high schools. Now, these up top make a ton of sense. These are Ingham County high schools sending to Lansing Community College. When it does get interesting is when I'm not just looking at Ingham, Eaton anymore. But what you can do is take these high schools, just in case you're interested. Maybe you already have a partnership with them. Maybe you have dual enrollment opportunities or early middle college. So these would make sense. But you could, for the high schools that you don't know about, you can go to the rest of my school data and go learn about Everett High School. Maybe you don't participate in any of their college nights, or maybe you have been participating for years and you can look at the trend lines for Everett High School. So just another kind of flip on the data you can think of if you're interested in their education prior to them coming to your community college.
Kelsey, are there any plans to make this easier for community colleges or for institutions to search their high school? Or is, I really appreciate you demonstrating this. I think it's great that we can find this information.
Yep.
But
so there are plans. I was actually hoping to set up a kind of another work group or stakeholder meeting so we could really get out of community colleges and universities. What is it you'd like to see about these high schools? Like, is it as simple as what high schools are sending students to my community college? Or is there other information that you'd like to see so you don't have to go digging around the rest of my school data? The UI, the report set up where we could pretty easily flip it on its head and post-secondary centric. Before we do that, though, we just kind of want to know, is that actually useful? I think it's useful, but I'm also sitting at the state and I'm not working with this data as often. So I'd really like to reach out to some counseling and administrators to see what other sort of information would be interesting about those K-12s, if that makes sense.
absolutely. Like things like a tag for that they're early college or that they're dual enrolled would be really useful, I think.
Oh, yeah, sure. And that is one side of the house right now that we do not have covered on my school data, the early middle college and dual enrollment. They appear on my school data, but what we are definitely looking towards this year and next year is making sure we have clean data to report on before we start putting those numbers out, but start putting forth treasury data. So not the Pell, but the Michigan Promise, and if Rachel is here, she'd know all the ones that she's working with to talk about promise zones, dual enrollment, early middle college. So there's a lot of that K-12 post-secondary blend work that we're hoping to accomplish, make headway on this year. Okay. All right, I'm gonna jump off of my crazy train when it comes to navigating my school data. Any questions at any time, please let me know, but I'm gonna jump back to the PowerPoint. So let's talk about that side of the house where we looked at everything that you can see publicly right now. That's like the 85% of my school data that you can access publicly. But if you have this secure login, this student pathways report is kind of the mecca and is really the base of all of our post-secondary reporting. Student pathways lets K-12 and post-secondary staff see college transcript and K-12 demographic and assessment data under the guidance of and compliance with FERPA. So student pathways are downloadable, secure data files, and you're really, you're getting as far down to, I can tell what students took at my school, which I would already know, but I could also see those students who moved on. I can go see what other classes and programs they're pursuing, and I can see those awards that they're ultimately attaining, as long as it's a college university that is in National Student Clearinghouse or STAR. So let's start, before I jump into that though, how can you determine if you can get secure access to my school data? So my school data is restricted or suppressed at some point, but if you have this login, you kind of have like these keys to the kingdom. So to start, what you should do if you do not have a login is you would come up here and hit the help. And essentially, we're going to send you to your college or university key holder. So while I said, a login is keys to my school data, there's an ultimate key holder that has that provides the users, the user accounts to you. That also takes the state out of it. The state doesn't know, can't determine or verify or authorize who you are, but your colleagues can. So that's kind of the security model we have set up. So you would start here at the college and university personnel. Once you are logged in and set up, make sure you log in. You'll come here to Other, Data Files, Student Pathways. And right now you can actually see it in public, but if you click on it and you're not logged in, it's not going to let you come in. If you are logged in, click on Student Pathways. What you're sent to is a UI that is going to let you download some data. And for the community colleges, what you would do, as long as you have access to your login and your login set up with access to Lansing Community College, let's say, you'd click on Michigan College or University, because that's what you're going to search Student Pathways for. Now, actually, I lied. I'm going to jump to the site real quick. So I'm following my own instructions there, navigating to Student Pathways. So it defaults to LEA. Go ahead and switch over to Michigan College or University. And up here's all the report information, the how-to guide, which will take you step by step, what's in these files. I've always been one to just jump right into things, so that's what I'm doing here. But you have much more report documentation up at the top. If I wanted to look for Lansing Community College, because I'm staff at Lansing Community College who has access to this data, there are 5 different files you can select from. Every single one of these files is returning you student level data. So the most generic file that kind of crosses everything across the board except for courses is what we call the basic student data file. Let me tell you, it is advanced, but it's the most basic of the advanced files. It's also your core file that you'd be interested in. This called basic student data file covers the spectrum of K-12 all the way to awards. I'll search by a parameter. So year of enrollment, this would be the first time a student entered Lansing Community College. Oh, no. That's never something I want to see. Hold on. We do have Student Pathways is a little bit buggy right now, which I'm hitting again. Know that we're working on it. Typically, if you, wonder why your enrollment's down. Sorry. Typically, you can override it by keep pressing the enrollment, but we're working through it. I can search for an individual student, so I know that one student who was at Lansing Community College, I want to know where they ended up going. They talked about going as far as a doctoral program, and they were starting their education at Lansing Community College. I can look for their UIC here and find, I really wish year of enrollment would work. Okay. Anyways, you can look for your individual student. You can upload a list of UICs with the bulk UIC upload. And you can also look for any of the students who attended Lansing Community College, but at any university or community college, the post-secondary program that they were ever enrolled in. So I could use something like 51, which I know is a program zip code. If I click this link over here for program zip, I would see a list of every single zip code that you could choose from. Oh, and it's bombing. I know it's up on my test site. Anyways, I knew I should have listened to myself and just stick to the PowerPoint. So when those settings aren't bombing, and you essentially send these results to yourself. So they come to you and the email that you have on file with your user account, and they send you courses and secondary CTE programs, that basic one we were talking about. So check out your email, and what you'll end up doing is downloading the file. So once you have all those logistics covered. If I was to look at the basic student data file first, let's kind of look at what we'd be getting. So I'm going to focus on one student because you all know basically your enrollment size, and we go all the way back. This data can go back as far as 1960 for sometimes. These files are pretty massive that you're going to get returned. So here, it's as if I was looking for Sarah as an individual student, and I'm going to learn a little bit more about her in the basic student data file. The basic student data file has about 40 to 50 columns. Here I'm only showing about 10, but this is kind of as we're working through this and telling a story. So what I can see is we've got Sarah here, whose identity has been masked, but it is real data, so I didn't just kind of work this up. But I start taking in the details of Sarah. So quickly scanning my columns, I see that Sarah graduated high school in 2011. Over here, these last two columns. She performed well in her math state assessments. This is back when the ACT was still the requirement, and the MME, that she was meeting both of her benchmarks. What else am I seeing? I'm seeing that her post-secondary enrollment career kind of is 2009 to 2014. I see she went to Oakland Community College and Walsh College of Accountancy and Business Administration, which I'm just going to call Walsh from now on. So I see that she went to two different IHEs over her course. Her IHE enrollment status, this only comes from the National Student Clearinghouse. So when you see this data, just know that it's coming from NSC, meaning it's coming from Oakland Community College. Oakland Community College and Walsh is sending this information. So for the most part, we're seeing she was half-time. She might have been full-time for a few of those sessions, but that tells us some things. Degree seeking, looks like she was non-degree seeking for a minute, but she had been actively working towards some sort of degree. And I can also see her GPA, her cumulative GPA at Oakland. I can't see it at Walsh. Walsh doesn't submit to STAR, Walsh, yeah, doesn't submit to STAR, and only STAR has GPA data.
Kelsey, are
Yes.
students able to see, or do you have plans for students, not students, us researchers, able to see students' high school transcripts, like what courses they took, what grades they earned, their GPA? Are there plans for that to be part of this file?
In 2014, we were working towards that. The CEPI collects the teacher-student data link, but as of 2015, due to burden on the K-12 side of the house, and there was no legislative mandate to collect course data for every student, our TISDL collection, before we could get it quality, drastically reduced. Only dual enrollment students, migrant, section 64B, which I'm pretty sure is dual enrollment too. Essentially, TISDL was cut down to about 10% of the students. Granted, those students who we have to have data on, we do have the full course data on. It'll be helpful for the dual enrollment, early middle college opportunities that I would like to see in here one day. But our plans to get high school transcript information went on hold when the legislation didn't back TISDL to the amount it used to. So not great news there. We were excited 2 years ago, but now we kind of have our hands tied. We'll see about the dual enrollment and early middle college students though. We should be able to get that course data to you guys.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so that's Sarah. So we kind of know what Sarah's post-secondary pathway is looking like. 2 colleges, solid. She's getting really great grades. She's good at math. This is what we know about Sarah. Let's jump to the course file for Sarah. This one was longer, but this is where I started kind of picked and pulled some of these out. What you're gonna see immediately, IHE, I'm only getting course data from STAR. So I'm not getting any of that information from Walsh because they're submitting only to NSC. But I can go through and see the courses she's taking, and I can see the grades that she's getting in these courses. Again, Sarah is a stellar student. Over time, in the beginning of her career, she was taking accounting and psych and world civ, so algebra. So whether or not she's, exploring or making her requirements for her degree, that's what we see up here. She took bowling. We even see that she saw bowling, so she fit that in. Over time, though, what you see if you look down and scan these course titles, she's taking a lot of business, a lot of math courses, and psych courses, which she is excelling in. So even if I had pulled another student, let's say Sarah also went to Macomb Community College. If I'm Macomb Community College, since Sarah entered my community college, I would see this information, this Oakland Community College information, because she was a student at Macomb Community College. So I do get access to her full post-secondary history. Now, there's 3 other files. We have the secondary CTE programs, the programs and concentrations, and the awards. Secondary CTE, this basically tells you whether or not Sarah was in some sort of business CTE program in high school. We do not have any record of that in terms of the state-approved CTE program data. So if you requested the file, you're going to get an email that says there's no data for Sarah on this regarding high school CTE programs. But the rest of her program and concentration information, we are getting. We can get that data from both STAR and NSC, but it's not required in the National Student Clearinghouse. It's required in STAR. So Walsh didn't elect to send data, but Oakland Community College had to, and it's what we're seeing. We're seeing that she was focused on business and accounting, which makes sense with her coursework. It also makes sense all the way back to her state assessments, where she was, she excelled and met state benchmarks in math. Move on to the awards degree certificate file, and we see she earned an associate degree at Oakland Community College, which wouldn't be news to Oakland Community College, but what would be news is 2 years later, she got a bachelor's from Walsh. She got a BBA in this program, in the same program. So earlier, go ahead.
Question. Would Sarah be included in the data for grads at 2 years or 3 years, since it was 2.5 years? Where would we find Sarah?
Ooh, good question. Let me bump back to my basic student data file. Since I see that she was degree seeking and started in 2010-11, I would expect her to be in that 2010-11 cohort. So 10-11, with her award being 2012, I would expect for Oakland Community College that to be in her in her rate year 2, excuse me. So I would expect this to be counted for Oakland Community College 10-11 enrollment cohort. This would be counted in the 2-year success rates. Now, if she hadn't earned this,
I have one other question regarding, and this is back on the high school information. How about the state CTE information? Is it possible to get information from them? I'm guessing that this is the same kind of situation where there's the burden on the K-12 and the legislation not advancing stopped that conversation. But I'm wondering because the programs report.
Yeah. So right here, you only get the program information, but CTE with Perkins, they have legislation backing the need to collect that data. So as far as I'm aware, Tisdale does also receive coursework for students participating in CTE programs. I'm going to double check that just in case I need to eat my words, but I know we have, we work with what we call the Tisdale CTE data set a lot, which tells me that those CTE kids are in Tisdale. I just don't know if it's every CTE student. So at some point, what I'd really like to see is on this courses file. So we'd have a post-secondary course file, but then we'd have a K-12 course file, and we could at least give you every course record that we're aware of if we have it for Sarah. But yeah, CTE has the backing of Perkins and MDE legislation. We're also seeing a huge push from MDE and the governor on CTE. So I really expect our CTE on my school data to blow up, and I hope it starts in the post-secondary realm as well. So to my other point, to go to the success rates, I'm not positive, but I believe Walsh College of Accountancy and Business Administration is a private four-year. If that were the case, and Oakland Community College, she did not earn, let's say she did not earn an associate's degree there, this would still count as a success. It would be 4 years out, so it would be in like the rate year 4 or rate year 5. But if she transferred to or transitioned to a 4-year institution, Oakland Community College would get credit for that success. Now, that was just looking at one student, and there was plenty of data to look through here. But this is where you could get into answering some of those questions, especially for that transfer student population. I could download the whole file for everybody who enrolled in 2015-16, and I could see, I could do a distinct count and see how many different schools had a student been enrolled in, and that would at least get me started with students who are getting their education from multiple colleges and university and their ultimate finish point. Because you would have access to this file. At one point, they were at your community college, which is why you'd be seeing their record. And that includes even if they started off and took some dual enrollment coursework in high school, which Sarah did. Sarah up here, she was taking some dual enrollment work at 2009-10. So if this was all actually Macomb Community College, but up here it's Oakland, I'd still have access to this entire record. Super powerful stuff. I get a lot of just like, first I get a lot of people overwhelmed about the amount of data, and I do try to support and help when you're working with these files. Like I said, that report documentation is pretty imperative to kind of consider when you're looking to see what all is available in student pathways. But there are colleagues in community colleges who are really digging data. Washtenaw Community College did great work early on. We have a couple links to the work that they did looking specifically at transfer students taking the next level course. So they started taking Math 101 at your institution, but moved on to another institution to take Math 102. Were they successful? Were they more successful than students who passed or didn't pass that course at your institution? Jackson College is getting into the thick of things. Any questions though on this file in particular? This is what I know in detail. I'd be happy to help out. Any other questions on student pathways?
Thanks so much, Kelsey. There's no other questions at this time, and I know that we have gone over a little bit our time, or we're just about at time for the webinar. I guess my computer clock is a little fast. Do we have any final questions for Kelsey? And I would be excited at our Guided Pathways meeting coming up. If any of you are there with mentor colleges, we will hopefully be able to have a little bit more discussion about what kind of data we need and and we'll be able to help bring that back as CEPI works to continue to refine these reports. I want to thank you so much, Kelsey, for being with us this morning and for spending this time to go through these reports. Great amount of information, and we look forward to making use of it.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and end the webinar now. Thanks for hanging with us, guys. The recording will be available. It takes